We're still in Judges. We'll start with a few verses to get us back into the story of the Levite and the concubine in Gibeah. We got to move forward, a lot of notes. But in Judges 19, verse 27, this is what it says. When her master arose in the morning and opened the doors of the house, remember this is the Levite, a member of the tribe of Levi, who was set apart in Israel to be the priests, to be the mediators between God and men in the Old Testament, to be the teachers of the law to the people. That's who the Levites were. They were the spiritual leaders of the day. But this Levite failed horribly. When her master arose in the morning, that's the Levite, he opened the doors of the house. He went out to go on his way because he had no thought of the concubine. He had intentions to go back home. It says, then behold, his concubine was lying at the doorway of the house with her hands on the threshold. I can't tell the story again. You remember it. He offered her the night before to this homosexual rapist mob of Gibeonites, Gibeyites, I guess they would be called. And they raped her all night, and in the morning she crawled back to the house where they were staying, and she died there on the threshold of the house. That's what's going on here. He said to her very callously, very quick, he says, get up and let's go. He doesn't run to her aid. He simply commands her to get up. It's time to leave. But there was no answer. So he places her dead body on the donkey, and the man arose and went to his home. When he entered his house, verse 29, an unthinkable event takes place. When a human being dies, there's much respect that should be given to that body. That body was made in the image and likeness of the Lord himself. So is the soul, so is the spirit, but the body is not inconsequential. So what this Levite does to this body of this concubine shows no respect. What he should have done was properly bury her in the traditions of the Mosaic law. But instead, and he knows the Mosaic law, or should as a Levite, but instead it says when he entered his house, he took a knife. Remember, as a priest, having been trained in the separation of an animal to be sacrificed, he knew how to cut up a carcass. He took a knife and he laid hold of his concubine, a dead human being, and he cut her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, according to her limbs. And he sent her throughout the territory of Israel to try to raise the ire of the tribes of Israel to what occurred that night in Gibeah. He decides the best way to get people's attention is to take this body, cut it into 12 pieces, and send one piece to each of the tribes of Israel. And that's exactly what he did. All who said it, can you imagine somebody coming to your door and saying, we have a message from a Levite of the hills of Ephraim. We have a message, and he gives you a piece of a human body. And a note, I'm sure, that said exactly what happened in Gibeah. Can you imagine? Their response was, nothing like this has ever happened. Because it hadn't. Nothing like this has ever happened or been seen from the days when the sons of Israel came up from the land of Egypt to this day. The atrocity. So the note was, consider it, take counsel and speak up. What are we going to do about what happened in the streets of Israel? So in Judges chapter 20, we move right into verse 1. The story continues with a response of the sons of Israel. They've got this body part. They've been told this story that a mob came, pounded on the door to try to take the man out and abuse him sexually all night, but that the concubine was given instead. She substituted for him. He thrust her out the door to protect himself, and this story has been told in Israel. So the sons of Israel have to decide what they're going to do about it. Remember, Israel is divided into 12 tribes, and one of the tribes is Benjamin, and that is the tribe where this atrocity took place. In this map, it's this little yellow, looks like a chicken leg, doesn't it? That's the tribe of Benjamin. Gibeah, the city of Gibeah, is within that yellow. It's hard to see, but I'll blow it up a little bit right here. There's Gibeah. That's where this is taking place. Gibeah, very near there. And that's where this is taking place. So if you look at the bigger map again, all these body parts, one went to Asher, one went to Naphtali, Zebulun, Issachar, one each went to all these areas of Israel. This woman's body, having been cut up into 12 pieces, is sent throughout the tribes of Israel, and they are to come together to decide what are we going to do about what's happening in our land. And this is what they decide to do. Judges chapter 20, there is a civil war in Israel. Then all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, I told you this last time, but one more time, if you look up, you can't see the word, but right here where the red is, in the northernmost tip of Israel, is a city called Dan, D-A-N, and down here in the territory of Simeon is the city called Beersheba, the well of the oath. So when you see that in the Bible, and you see it often, the phrase from Dan to Beersheba, what they're saying is the entire part of Israel, the entire land of Canaan, the entire land of Israel. That's that phrase from Dan to Beersheba, from the north to the south, all of it. That's what it means. So it says, then all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, which means all of them, including the land of Gilead, which is these tribes here, Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh, that are on the east side of the Jordan River, which is right here. This became known as the land of Gilead, and that's where these 3 tribes, 2.5 tribes, chose. They come over also. All of Israel, all the tribes, all 12 tribes gather. All the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, came out, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mitzpah. Now, Mitzpah, you can see on the map, is right here, Mitzpah. Bethel is another player. It's about 4 miles away, these 2 dots. Bethel means the house of God. Beit El, E-L is the Hebrew word for God. Beit is the word for house. So the house of God, the name of this city is right here. And Shiloh is right here. And I mention that because Shiloh is traditionally during this period where the tabernacle was set up. Remember Moses' tabernacle? God in Exodus gives Moses the plans for this tabernacle and its poles and its sockets and its coverings and all the things inside, the golden lampstand. We know it as the menorah, the table of showbread, the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy of Holies, all these things. That was in Shiloh right here. Set up for Israel to worship God at. Just important things to know while we go through the story. Verse 2, it says, the chiefs of all the people. All the people have gathered. Look who they brought with them. The chiefs of all the people, even of all the tribes of Israel, took their stand in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. So not only did the 11 tribes of Israel gather, remember Benjamin would be the 12th, and they're the bad guys here. All 11 tribes gathered, but they didn't come alone. They marched to Mitzpah, right here in the middle of the yellow. They marched to Mitzpah with an army of 400,000 men. They came for war. They didn't come to ask questions. They came for war against their brothers. Verse 3 says, now the sons of Benjamin, in the yellow, where this atrocity took place, they should be responsible. It's their tribe, their family. The sons of Benjamin heard that the sons of Israel had gone up to Mitzpah. So they know an army has gathered. I came up, and you know something else I should say. Benjamin, remember how many pieces he cut the lady into? It was 12. So Benjamin, the leaders of the tribe of Benjamin also got a portion of this woman's body, and the letter telling them exactly what happened in their territory the night before. You understand the point? Benjamin also has been alerted to this, of what happened. So Benjamin realizes that when everybody else got this part of the body, they came together 400,000 strong. We've got a problem. the sons of Benjamin heard that the sons of Israel had gone up to Mizpah, and the sons of Israel said, they want to know from the Levite, tell us, how did this wickedness take place? We read the letter. We want to hear it out of your mouth. Before we do something rash, tell us what happened. So in verse 4, so the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, so he starts telling the story. He says, I came up with my concubine to spend the night at Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. Remember, he could have added, I passed up the ancient city of Jerusalem because Gentiles lived there, and I wouldn't spend the night in the midst of the unsafe Gentiles in Jebus, the ancient city of Jerusalem. So I moved on to where the Jews reside, my people, our people. And I chose to stay at Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. Before we move much further, I just want to show you a couple of verses here. One word here, he says the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered. I just want to say a thing or two about murder before we move on, because there's a very definite difference between murder and killing. Some people believe that to take a human life is immoral no matter the circumstance. The Bible, and this story right here is a great chapter to prove this. The Bible makes a huge distinction between illegitimate killing and legitimate killing in warfare, in self-defense. So the word that's used here that the Levite says is the woman was murdered, and the word is ratsah, R-A-T-S-A-H, and it means to kill, to murder, to strike down, or to slay, to kill intentionally, and often with premeditation. That's what a murder is. Everybody knows what a murder is. If you've got a television and you turn it on and you ever watch the news, murders are all over the news. That's what murder is. It's an illegitimate taking of life. But what we're going to see, and of course the Bible says in the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20 verse 13, one of the 10, thou shalt not murder. I think it's number 6, maybe 7. Thou shalt not murder. You can't illegitimately take the life of a human being, because God has made us all in His image and His likeness, and humanity has great value to God. And we are not free to take the life of a human being intentionally in a murderous way. But there's another fact here, because illegitimate killing is murder, but in this chapter, as we're about to see, there is legitimate killing, because the Lord Himself is about to tell the 11 tribes, you go up against your brothers Benjamin and slaughter them. If there's an illegitimacy to all killing of all human beings, how could God make that statement? Then we would be calling God an illegitimate murderer, and obviously there's no truth in that. There is a difference between legitimate killing in warfare and illegitimate murder. I just want to tell you that, because sometimes you trip across things like that, where people say, no, all killing is murder. No, it's not. No, it's not. The Bible very clearly teaches that. So again, this is a great chapter to refer to when you're discussing this, the killing of human beings, as relates to illegitimate and legitimate murder, because both of them are in this chapter. Here we see an illegitimate taking of life. The husband of the woman who was illegitimately killed, wrongly killed, immorally killed. And in a few verses, we're going to see moral killings. We move on. Verse 5 says, but the men of Gibeah rose up against me. He continues to tell the story. They surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me. Remember what they said, though, when they pounded on their house? Send out the man that we may have relations with him. But after realizing what they did to the concubine, the Levite realizes this wasn't going to be a social event. They were going to abuse me all night the way they did her, and I would have ended up the dead one. That's who this mob of madness was. They intended to kill me. Instead, they ravished my concubine, so that she died. It's interesting to me that the Levite says, they ravished my concubine. It's all their fault. Not only did they rape her, the ravish word, but they killed her. And remember again, when the pounding on the door took place, who was it that sent the concubine out? It was him. It's also interesting that he's not upset about the ravishing. He's upset about the killing. Remember, he offered her to be ravished that night. What frustrated him in the morning when he said, "Get up, let's go, it's time to leave," wasn't that she had been ravished all night and badly abused. What bothered him is that they had killed her. That's what sin does. It creates blind spots. It blinds us to reality. And this man is steeped in sin, and the reality and the value system that he should have is all messed up. I mean, entirely topsy-turvy. And he's not upset about the fact that she was ravished by the men. He's mad because they killed her. It's an astounding story of the depravities of humanity. Verse 6 says, I took hold of my concubine, I cut her in pieces, and I sent her throughout the land of Israel's inheritance, and all inheritance meaning the plots of land that each of the tribes got, for they have committed a lewd and disgraceful act in Israel. Is that true? Is it lewd and disgraceful what this mob of people did to the woman? Isn't it also true that it's lewd and disgraceful what this Levite did to his concubine in offering her to these men that night? I mean, you see what's going on here, the great ironies in the story. It's like here's a perfect example of the Lord saying, if you want to judge a brother, take the mote, take the log out of your own eye so that you can see properly, and then you can help your brother take the splinter out of his eye. Jesus didn't say, don't judge. He said, don't be guilty when you judge. Make sure that you're right before me before you cast judgment on anybody else. And this is the pot calling the kettle black is what we have here. We have a sinner, lewd and disgraceful acting Levite, saying those people are lewd and disgraceful. Wow. But sin creates blind spots. And this guy, steeped in sin as a Levite, won't marry the woman, takes her as a concubine, instead a second-class wife. I mean, we could go on and on about where the problems are in the immorality of the way everybody in Judges 19, 20, and 21 is living. And God's about to prove it, that you're all wrong. You're all living immorally. So he takes hold of her because they had done this lewd and disgraceful act, and he cuts her and he sends her throughout the land. Behold, in verse 7, all you sons of Israel, give your advice and counsel here. So he's retold the story. And in verse 8, we see the response of this 400,000 man army and the leaders of the 11 tribes. Then all the people arose as one man, and they said, not one of us will go to his tent. We will not go back to our homes. Not one of us will go to his tent, nor will any of us return to his house. But now this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah, and we will go up against it by lot. We will fight. That's the decision. Verse 10 says, we'll take 10 men out of 100. Verse 10 is simply talking about how the war would take place, that 10% of the men, the 400,000, 10% of them would create a supply line to feed the other ones what they needed. Supplies, food, ammunition, everything that you need in warfare. Verse 10 speaks of that. We'll take 10 men out of 100 throughout the tribes of Israel, 100 out of 1,000, 1,000 out of 10,000 to supply food for the people. It's a supply line. That when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, they may punish them for all the disgraceful acts. That's what's going to happen. The armies are going to punish Gibeah, the sons of Benjamin, for the disgraceful act that they've committed in Israel. So 10% would be the supply line, 90% of our men will fight. our brother Benjamin. Don't lose sight of that fact. We'll fight our brother Benjamin. Civil war. Thus all the men of Israel were gathered against the city. This is the city of Gibeah, united as one man. United in mind. They all knew what they were going to do. But look how they do it. The tribes of Israel sent men through the entire tribe of Benjamin. This is diplomacy. This isn't an act of madness. This is diplomacy. It's reasonable what they do. They're an overwhelming force. They could have destroyed Benjamin with no problem, but this is what they do. The tribes of Israel, these 11 tribes, sent men throughout the entire tribe of Benjamin saying, "What is this wickedness that has taken place among you?" And look at what they demand. It's a reasonable demand. In verse 13, they say, "Now then, deliver up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah." That's all they want. All they want is the delivering up of the guilty men who did this to this woman. That's all they want. "Deliver up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove this wickedness from Israel." This is murder. And it's fornication. It's all against the Mosaic law. For fornication, you should die. It's not fornication, it's adultery. This is a married woman. And the law speaks to that. If you are caught in adultery, and they were caught in adultery, they should be stoned to death. If you kill someone, you should be stoned to death according to the law. So the 11 tribes come and say, "Let us act according to the law. Surrender these worthless fellows to us so that we can kill them and cleanse this blood guiltiness, this wickedness from Israel." Adultery is in our land. The ironies. Adultery is in our land and murder is in our land. But let's overlook the fact that we're all idolaters, worshiping Baal and Asherah and Chemosh and Dagon and all these false gods. This idolatry that's rampant in the land of Israel. Yet they come and take notice of the murder and the adultery. The ironies are thick, and God's going to snap them out of their foolishness in just a minute. But look how the sons of Benjamin respond. All they want is the bad guys. But the sons of Benjamin, the tribe, would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the sons of Israel. The tribe of Benjamin refused to give over the guilty men. Why? Why would they do that? Why would you defend, why would you protect men that were caught in the act, not only wanted to commit homosexual acts, which are an abomination to the Lord, but when that didn't work, they committed heterosexual offenses against the Lord with this concubine, so much so that they killed her? Why would you defend that? Why would the men of Benjamin come together and say, "We will not give you our men, we will fight to the death"? Is that a logical thing? Is it a reasonable response from Benjamin? What is it that we just talked about that makes you not think right? It makes you unable to reason, to process reality. A 400,000 man army, and you say, "We will fight and we will win, and we will defend our rapist, murderous brothers." What? It's this blindness of sin. The further you walk down this idolatrous road away from God, the more depraved a human mind becomes. The heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who could know it? Jeremiah 17:9 says that. It's never been untrue. It's true today. The heart of man is desperately wicked, deceitful above all things. It lies to us. And here in the tribe of Benjamin, their hearts are lying to them as if to say, it's not that big a deal. It's one concubine. You wouldn't even marry her and make her your wife. How valuable is she to it? Why are you coming to pick on us? Nothing really happened here. Turn your heads and go away. Wow. That's how calloused they were to sin. To the most atrocious sin you can imagine. The rape and the murder of a woman. No big deal to them. Willing to defend it. They were that blinded by their own sin. That's what happens when a person walks away from God. Old Testament, New Testament, no matter when. That's what happens when you turn your back on God. You start to not see reality the way it is. The moral abyss, right? That's what Judges 19, 20, and 21 are all about, to show just how deep into sin, to moral sin, Israel was. Immoral living everywhere in the land. So what was the choice that Benjamin had? The choice of the people of Benjamin, when the armies come to them, all their 11 brothers, the other tribes come and say, give us the guilty men. The choice was give up the guilty men, which was proper, and let them be put to death, which is proper, legitimate killing, or we'll all fight and die to defend them. To defend people who were caught in the act of not only rape, but murder. We'll defend them to the death. That's just deranged. Absolutely deranged. But they could have used this as an event that get them back into a covenant relationship with God, with Yahweh. They could have understood, my goodness, this took place on our own land. We have walked so far away from God. Look at what we're capable of. We have to purge our land. We have to purge our tribe. And we have to purge all the land of Israel. This could have been a revival, should have been a revival in the land of Israel as they go back and understanding what they've done wrong against the moral law, against the Mosaic law, and against their God, pled with Him for mercy, for forgiveness. But instead, they double down. They say, we will take up arms and defend the rapists and the murderers. It's insane. I mean, it's almost the definition of insane. It's so far from proper thinking, it's almost a response of insanity. But that's what you get, and that's what sin does. It steals your sense from you. Makes you out of your mind, unable to be reasoned with. Have you had conversations with anybody recently? When you just look at them and you think, well, why can't we reason anymore with people? Why can't we have actual conversations where information is communicated and transferred one from the other, and you understand my point and I understand your point? So much of the world today is so steeped in sin, so far away from God, that they can't even reason. They have no more logic. It's impossible for them. That's what sin does. You want an example? The tribe of Benjamin, Judges chapter 20. So steeped in sin, they can't even reason. They can't even see. All we have to do is hand over these atrocious, worthless men, rightly put them to death, or have the other tribes put them to death, cleanse ourselves from this atrocity of this blood guiltiness that's all over the nation of Israel, and continue living. They can't reason through that. That was unreasonable to them, that they would give up rapists and murderers. It was unreasonable. Sin is brutal. The sons of Benjamin gathered from the cities of Gibeah to go out to battle against the sons of Israel. Insanity. 400,000 people, all 11 tribes of Israel, are against you. And your mind makes you think that you can win this battle? Insanity. In the defense of guilty people? Insanity. Who does this? Verse 18, or verse 15, from the cities of on that day, the sons of Benjamin were numbered 26,000 men. 26,000 men they were able to gather from the tribe of Benjamin, from their territory, who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were numbered 700 choice men. So how many is that? 26,700 men. Against how many? 400,000. And then in verse 16, just an aside, out of all these people, 700 choice men who were left-handed, each one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. My friend Clay Jackson likes this verse. He pulls it out of context horribly, but he likes it because he's left-handed, and he likes that idea of being slinging a stone at a hair and not missing. Oh, my buddy. 700 choice men, the left-handed ones. But there were 26,700 in the army. The men of Israel, besides Benjamin, what about the other army that you're going up against? 400,000 men who drew the sword, all of these men of war. So again, Benjamin's army, 26,700. Hold on to that number. They would fight an army. They would choose to fight an army of 400,000 men to defend a few worthless, immoral men. Is blood thicker than water? Is that what's going on here? Are they just defending their brother, their fellow tribe of Benjamin? Who are you to come ride your high horse in here and say that we're bad guys? You know what's going on here in their minds? It's just sin. Whatever's going on, however they got to this depraved decision that we will defend these rapists and murderers at all costs. However they got here, it was led by sin. Probably 1,000 different sins. Led by idolatry first, walking away from God. The sons of Israel arose. You want this? You got it. That's what happens. Benjamin, you don't want to give up the evil men? You want to go to war? You got it. The sons of Israel arose. 11 tribes, 400,000 strong. They went up to Bethel. And they inquired of God and said, who shall go up first to the battle against the sons of Benjamin? And you'll notice here, if at any time in Scripture God wanted to say all killing is immoral, don't ever kill a human being for any reason, this would have been a great time for him to say that, especially when brother's about to take up arms against brother. But you'll notice he doesn't say that. They ask him, who shall go up first in the battle? Who's going to start the fight? And in battle, people die. Who will go up first to battle against the sons of Benjamin? And Yahweh answered them, Judah shall go up first. He didn't say, don't do it, don't do it. This is against my will. What he said was, let the civil war commence. This tribe of Benjamin must be disciplined. But you people in Israel think that you have no sin. You think that you're moral. I'm about to teach you that you are not. You are living in a different type of sin, fueled by your idolatry. But look what happens here. Well, before we get there, I brought the map back up just to make a point here. It says that they inquired, that the sons of Israel went up to Bethel and they inquired of the Lord. I'm going to say this quickly. You can see Bethel here, and remember what I told you it meant? The house of God. Shiloh up here is where traditionally where the tabernacle was during the period of the judges. For at least the bulk of the time, it was in Shiloh. So are they calling here? And they may be and they may not. You make the decision for yourself. It doesn't matter. But when it says they went up to Bethel, does that mean they went to the tabernacle in Shiloh? Is it talking about the tabernacle of God as the house of God? It could be a nickname, Bethel, the house of God, for the tabernacle, because that's where he resided, right? In the tabernacle above the Holy of Holies, the Shekinah glory. It may also mean this city of Bethel. They may have just gone to the city 4 miles away. And it also may be that the tabernacle was moved back and forth from Shiloh to Bethel during the time of the judges. We don't have a great verse that says that. We don't have any verse that says that. But something's going on here. Something is at Bethel. And does Bethel mean the city or does it mean the tabernacle? It doesn't matter. But you may read, if you have a study Bible, you may read comments to that end. I just wanted to say that in case you read that and think that I'm saying something that your Bible doesn't. It could be either. We know that the Ark of God was at Bethel, the Ark of the Covenant. We're about to learn that fact. But does that mean that the Ark itself alone is in the city of Bethel? Or does it mean that it's in Shiloh at the tabernacle that they're calling here the house of God? Could be either. Could be the city of Bethel, could be the tabernacle. Again, I just told you that, not to confuse you just because you may read it in your study Bible. I wanted to cover it. What's important here, though, is not the location of these things. What's most important here is that Yahweh confirms the decision to fight. Yahweh confirms the decision to go to battle, to kill. At the beginning, there was murder that took place, illegitimate. The concubine was murdered, and that was wrong. And all the tribes of Israel agree to that. And now there's going to be more killing, but this killing is right and moral, and God puts His stamp of approval on it. Judah shall go up first. A great chapter, if you ever get into this conversation of killing with somebody who thinks, oh, all killing is bad. Go to Judges chapter 20. It tells the story out of God's own mouth. Notice here in this statement, Judah shall go up first, that God doesn't promise victory to the 11 tribes. All they've asked Him is who should fight first. We've already decided, apart from the Lord. Remember also that in this negotiation, in the gathering of information, God's name hasn't been spoken yet. Nobody's turned to the Lord and said, Lord, what shall we do? The 11 tribes of Israel has decided for themselves, we've got a capable army. We will go into battle. We don't need the Lord's help. We're not asking you for help. We're not asking you, all we're asking you for is a little bit of guidance. All we want to know is who should go up first, as if that's enough. And God's about to show them, teach them a very costly lesson about the way they're approaching the living God. So, remember in this period of Judges, before we go any further, that aside from the remnant, and when I say remnant, I mean think Ruth and Boaz, the story we've gone over at nighttime of Ruth, that's going on in these times. But the bulk of Israel was in idolatry. They weren't worshiping God. They were worshiping all the false gods of the land and in all their immoral sexual activities. That's the way those people worshiped. The Canaanites, the pagans. All 12 tribes of Israel were guilty in this, very guilty. And it's very clear in the beginning pages of the book of Judges. All of them were guilty of this, except for that small remnant of obedient people. That's what's going on here. Israel is disobedient and steeped in idolatry, and all of them are doing it. Not just the tribe of Benjamin. They've just taken it to a hideous end. But all of the tribes are guilty. And they don't even come to worship Yahweh properly. All they come to do is rub that little rabbit's foot and say, okay, we talked to Yahweh, now we're going to go do things our way. And Yahweh will say, not so fast. And so in verse 19, we see the civil war begin. And the 11 tribes of Israel, the 400,000 man army, are about to learn we are wrong. We are not right with God either. So the sons of Israel, read what it says. The sons of Israel arose in the morning and camped against Gibeah. The war has begun. The men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. The war has begun. And the men of Israel arrayed for battle against them at Gibeah. Then the sons of Benjamin, read verse 21 and make sense of it. Then the sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah. They left the city. They walked out of the city. They engaged in battle with the other 11 tribes. And they felled to the ground on that day 22,000 men of Israel. Now, wait a minute. Go back to verse 18. The sons of Israel arose, 11 tribes, against one tribe, Benjamin. The sons of Israel arose, they went up to Bethel, they inquired of God, we're doing the work. Who shall go up first in battle against the sons of Benjamin? And God responded to them. And He said, Judah shall go up first. So of the 11 tribes, the tribe of Judah should start the battle, but then you get down to verse 21, and the battle has begun because God said Judah goes first. And what happens? The sons of Benjamin come out to Gibeah and fell to the ground 22,000 men of Israel. Who won this battle? The big army or the little army of Benjamin? What does the Bible say? The sons of Benjamin felled to the ground 22,000 men of Israel. Who won this battle? Benjamin did. But now wait a minute. I thought that what was going on in this story is that all the 11 tribes were coming to Benjamin to prove to Benjamin that they were immoral and needed to shape up. But all of a sudden we see this immoral Benjamin being at least temporarily used by God to punish all the tribes of Israel, the 11 tribes that came up against them, because they are all wrong and steeped in idolatry. It's a fascinating bit of the history that God would use the hideous Benjamites who are defending a rapist and a murderer, or rapists and murderers, that God would use them in the first 2 days of these battles to discipline the other tribes of Israel. So you come all high and mighty and think you've got this all figured out. You're wrong. You're not doing it according to the way I want proper worship, that I want to be worshiped. They were doing it wrong, and God showed them in this battle. The people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves, and they arrayed for battle again in the place where they had arrayed themselves the first day. So the end of the battle happens. 22,000 men are killed of this 400,000 man army. The Benjamites, probably in these first 2 days, lost about 1,000 men. I'll prove that to you next week. But after losing 22,000 men, they get back together around the front of Gibeah where they started this battle on this day, licking their wounds, trying to figure out what just happened. I thought God said, Judah go up first. Yeah, we heard it. Yahweh said. But remember, there was no promise in that. He didn't say, I will give them into your hand. He just said, start the battle. I have something for all of you. Verse 23, the sons of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening. So what did they do the first time? It says they went up to Bethel and they inquired of God. They asked Him questions. Proper worship? Not according to the law. What did they do this time? The sons of Israel went up and they wept before the Lord until evening. So the question is, it's getting closer to worship. They're going back to the Lord, but is this proper worship? Do sinful men, idolatrous men in the Jewish age, worship Yahweh by weeping? Is that what atones for sin, weeping? Is that what makes a man who's wrong right with God? Do they atone for their sins by asking questions of Yahweh? Just lead us. We'll do all the work. Just tell us how to start. Is that proper worship? Now the answer is no to both of those questions. What is proper worship? According to the Mosaic law, how does a sinning man atone for his sins? How does he do it? What does he bring? What does he bring to the tabernacle, to the priests? What does a man bring to atone and cover for his sin, whether it be idolatry or anything else? How does he do it according to the Mosaic law? He brings an animal. He brings a lamb, he brings a goat, he brings a calf, he brings turtle doves if he's poor. Substitutionary blood sacrifice. Someone has to die to cover the sins of man. You don't weep and be forgiven. You don't weep to God and get direction from God in the Old Testament days, and you don't just simply ask God questions. And we'll see next time that finally they will offer blood sacrifice to God. And God says, now you're talking. Now you're worshiping me properly. Now you've woken up from your slumber. Now you realize who's in control of things. And now I will give you the victory, O idolatrous Israel. A lot going on here. We'll pick it up next time. Heavenly